The Premier League has handed out its monthly awards, so it's our turn. This is Superlatives, the monthly series where we look at the best and the worst of the football of the last month. Now, I could start with Man United as the disappointment of the month. They need to concede 15 more shots over the next 2 games to surpass Derby County's historic 11-point season for most shots conceded in a single Premier League season ever. But we actually need to have a conversation about Brighton as well. Brighton spent the entirety of April without scoring a singular goal that they meant to score. Their only Premier League goal was against Burnley, and it was an own goal by Muric that Brighton didn't expect to score. It was just a back pass that Muric miscontrolled, and that was the only goal they scored all month. So I was puzzled by this, and I'm generally surprised at the level they have shown so far this season, and I don't understand it, and I needed some help. So I enlisted the help of Joe Sayers of the Albion Obsessed podcast. We had a really good conversation about the last month and what contributed to that massive drop in form. Obviously, last weekend, as we speak, they beat Aston Villa, but that was their first win in a very long time. So what contributed to their massive drop in form relative really to last season? Why haven't they scored a goal all month? What is the kind of general feeling around Roberto De Zerbi, around the state of the club at the moment? So here it is, my conversation with Joe Sayers, and then we'll be back with the rest of the awards, including Player of the Month. Hi, Joe.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for coming on. This will help clear a lot of confusion I have. So, I'm based in the US, right? And Brighton came here in the summer. Actually, it was an incredible experience. I got to meet Danny Welbeck, Joe Veltman, and Von Hecke. And that was great, and got to watch them play Chelsea. At the time, I had really positive outlooks, I think, on both Chelsea and Brighton, actually, which turned out to be completely wrong. More Chelsea than Brighton. I remember afterwards predicting Brighton to come 9th, and that was, I thought at the time, really harsh, because they had finished, obviously, 6th last season, and their performance in that particular game in preseason just left me with a really good impression about how they're going to cope without McAllister, basically. And it just hasn't turned out that way. You're on course for a lower finish. April, in particular, which is the focus of this chat here, has been a bit catastrophic, hasn't it? Why, simply?
There's been a number of things that Brighton fans have been unhappy with this season, and one of those things is the goalkeeper rotation. And Bart Verbruggen had a really good international break with the Netherlands. I think in March, and sort of like 2 man of the match performances. I don't know if he got man of the match, but he should have done for both of those games, because he was absolutely incredible. And we thought he would maybe come back from that international break and be the number one for the rest of the season. Obviously, we bowed out of Europe in quite a disappointing way, losing 4-1 over 2 games to Roma. So I thought maybe the goalkeeper rotation might stop, and that's one thing that Brighton fans have put down to conceding a lot, is that maybe the goalkeepers and the defence don't have that sort of telepathic understanding of who's going to play a pass where, and there's been a lot of mistakes, especially against Man City. We made a lot of mistakes. We wanted to play out the back, we wanted to play our brand of football, but you can't do that against the best team in the world. And we found that out the hard way and lost 4-0, obviously. But I think that's something that De Zerbi is quite stubborn in, is that he will always want to play his way no matter who he's got out on the pitch. He did say to us at the fans forum last week that he likes to make sure that players are playing in their most comfortable position, and only gives them roles that they're comfortable with. But I'm not entirely sold on that. I think he does ask a lot of Pascal Gross and Billy Gilmore to replicate the Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo double pivot, and it's something that we haven't been able to do this season, is replicate that. And I think when you lose 2 players like that, it's incredibly tough. So yeah, I think it's just been a lot of maybe expecting more from the players that we've got in roles that they're maybe not comfortable in. It has put us in quite a hard spot, I think.
Really crucial couple of points here. You were at a fan forum.
Mm-hmm.
I got very curious straight away to kind of ask what the feeling around De Zerbi is. De Zerbi's obviously been linked with the Liverpool job, which is looking likely that it's going to be Arne Slot. Video on the channel explaining how Arne Slot might line up with Liverpool on this channel. So go and watch that if you fancy. Filmed right after the news kind of broke that he was going to make it. What is the feeling around De Zerbi at the moment?
It's a really confusing one because he's even come out last couple of days and spoken to Sky Sports and said that he wants to stay at Brighton. And the quote is going around. Fabrizio Romano picked up the quote, and there seems to be more traction gathering that actually De Zerbi might just stay another year. And I don't know whether that's down to him wanting to stay or his options just completely running out. He's been through a really rough spot, like the roughest spot, I would say, as a manager in his career with Brighton after our downfall in Europe. So I think a lot of teams are looking at him and saying, actually, is he the manager that everyone made out to be? I still think he is. I think he's world class. I think he's elite. There's some things that he needs to learn, and I think that's the case with any young coach, is they need to learn in these really rough spots, and I think he does learn from them quite well. We had a few last season where we lost like 5-1 to Everton, and then the next week we went and beat Arsenal 3-0 at their place. So season, he does learn a lot quite quickly. And I'm not trying to sell him. I want him to stay at Brighton, of course I do. Okay. And you know, I do think that he would be a good fit for a top club. Of course, I want him to stay with us, and I think he wants to stay. I think he does genuinely love his players, and I think he does genuinely love working for Brighton Hove Albion Football Club. I mean, we're sat on a record profit. We're going into a transfer window where there's a lot of teams that are going to have to sell to hit financial fair play regulations. So I think we're in a healthy spot for him to stay and for him to achieve something that he wants to achieve next season, which is European football again. He wants to keep that passion. He wants to keep that motivation. And I think that's what he's been saying has been lacking over this last month, is the motivation is just completely on the floor. The players reacted badly to going out of Europe, and they had no end goal. That they thought to themselves, "Oh, we haven't got enough in the league to achieve Europe again." The Premier League's lost the 5th spot of the Champions League, so the European spots aren't extended past 7th. Really, I don't think so. Yeah, it's really it's a mixture of lack of motivation and a big hit mentally from losing the way we did in Europe.
But you lost to Roma, though, so I'm not sure. Was it the manner in which you lost to Roma? I think the first leg was 4-0, to be fair. Was that kind of why?
Yeah, I think so, because the way we played against them at home, and I know they played sort of a second-string team against us when they came to our place because they were 4-0 up. But I thought we made a really good account of ourselves in the second leg, and I thought that had we have played the way we played in the second leg, in the first leg, we wouldn't have lost 4-0. I think De Zerbi went to Roma a little bit too ambitious, thinking that we could play the way we want to play against one of the best teams in Europe, in my opinion. They're absolutely incredible. They're so strong all throughout their spine. They've got some players that can kill you, and we found that out the hard way. So I think had we have gone to Rome a little bit more resolute and a little bit more let's grind out a result and take them back to our place, and I think that plays on the players' mind that they could have done better. They could have done better for the club. They could have done better for the fans. And Roberto De Zerbi has been quoted to say that they feel like they've let the fans and the club down because of how they went out in Europe. And I think that's credit to Roberto De Zerbi and the players for wanting more success, and for wanting to do better against the best teams in the world, the best teams in Europe. So it's not something I look at negatively. It's something that I look at and think we can go again next season. We can compete. We've shown that we can compete against the best teams in this league as well. So it's just a case of putting a few more pieces of the puzzle together. and allowing De Zerbi that sort of freedom to play the way he wants to play, and giving the players that allow him to do that.
Earlier on, you mentioned the fact that De Zerbi plays in a pretty specific fashion, and he's famous for it. The kind of, we're gonna pass the ball short on the ground, no matter what, through the middle, and kind of there was a change this season, and I haven't honestly followed Brighton as much as I would have liked this year, but I went back and kind of reviewed. Tifo had a video about 5 months ago about how if they have been found out, so to speak. But they talked about, I can't remember the journalist's name, but he's one of the athletics analysts, a Brighton writer. So they talked about how it was a 2-3 build-up shape, and then the part of the 3 being the fullbacks inverting in field, which is good in theory, but then you have a lot of space out wide. For particularly the center backs to defend, and for the wing backs to track back. But the idea there was, if you defend the middle, threat from out wide is less, so you can defend that easier than if you allow space in the middle. But then they were found out and were conceding a lot of crosses and cutbacks as well. So they changed to put Igor and Adam Webster wide, and then have one center back there, and then have Gross and Gilmore in particular ahead of them, sometimes Baleba. And I would like to ask you about Carlos Baleba, because I think I've watched all the goals that he conceded in April, 11 of them. So there's quite a good sample there to figure out that defending wide is still a problem. You conceded 6 of the 11 goals from wide, or from like attacks that start wide. And a lot of them also from turnovers. So 2 things. One is that the building up, the passing has cost them quite a lot, which is sometimes is okay if you're building your team and you're just teaching new faces to a new system, and you're kind of, it's a trust the process kind of thing. But also, you touched on the role of the 2 defensive midfielders, or the double pivot, really, the Gilmore Gross combination, which is Caicedo and McAllister last season. Do you feel like this is the area you need to strengthen in the summer? Or are there other facets of the squad you would like to see more improvement on, while allowing Gilmore to continue to grow, and Pascal Gross being the versatile player he is? In that preseason game against Chelsea, he played left back, I think, at one point. So do you think this midfield is enough and you need to strengthen other areas?
Yeah, I mean, Pascal Gross played centre back in that game against Chelsea because Van Hecker got sent off for that challenge on
Oh,
Caicedo.
True. Yeah, that was a
wild one. Shifted back to centre back, which makes him the most versatile player Brighton have ever had. I think he's played in every single position on the pitch for us, except for in goal. So
hey, credit to him. It's hard to win Germany call up again. So
yeah, he's fantastic for us. I think there are certain roles that you ask too much of Pascal Gross. I think he is quite limited physically on how quick he is, but I think something that a lot of people say, and I certainly vouch for, is that his extra 2 yards of pace are in his mind. He knows where to be. He knows where his players are, and I think he's more than capable if you ask him to. But you would want a defensive midfielder alongside him to help out, and I think we did see that at the end of last season. I think Caicedo played alongside him a couple of times, and it gave him that freedom to sort of roam forward and do what he does best. I think, we need to strengthen in those areas for sure, and it's one of the hardest positions to strengthen in world football. I don't think you could find a good price, a price that Brighton would pay anyway, for a world-class centre defensive midfielder. You saw how much Liverpool struggled last season to get one in, and obviously they ended with Endo this season, and McAllister, who's come in and solidified their midfield. But I don't think you can find a world-class centre defensive midfielder for under £50 million. So it's a really difficult position to be wanting to get a ready-made replacement for. And I think that's where Carlos Baleba comes in. He's very much a project player. And I think next season he will be really instrumental to the way we want to play. He's got all the qualities. Okay. He's so physical. He can burst forward. He can make a tackle. There's a few little tiny bits of rawness in his performances where the goal against Burnley, for example, he will sort of make an errored judgment and put his foot in. The ball then goes back to Verbruggen and then Burnley cut in and score the goal. Yeah. So there's all these little bits that he needs to iron out of his game, but I think he's going to be fantastic for us. And I think it's a position where we're going to have to be patient in. I think we're just going to have to sort of wait and see and hope that... I mean, Gilmore's fantastic. Gilmore
like
can
I'm a big fan.
run in midfield. I think if you can get him and Baleba playing really well together, I think there's your pairing. I hope that can be the case, because I don't want us to be spending ridiculous money on a player that might not work. Mm-hmm. And going back to your point on conceding goals from wide positions, if you look at our fullback situation, it's not ideal at all. Purvis Estupiñán's had 3 injuries this season and is now out for the rest of the season up until God knows when next season.
I must have missed that.
And he was, last season for us, absolutely incredible, but he's been playing through the injury this season, hence why he's not been put in those same levels of performances in. We had Jack Hinshelwood break through at the start of the season, who's been playing right back for us. And he's been absolutely unbelievable, and then he had to have foot surgery. So then all of a sudden your 2 starting fullbacks can't play. Tarek Lamptey is incredibly injury prone and can only play sort of 3-4 games at a time. Joel Veltman is a fantastic right back, but he's got limitations going forwards. So when he does get caught out in possession and has to track back, it's a hard thing for him to do. And we've been having to play Igor at left back, or we've been having to play a back 3. So I think there's your answer in terms of why Brighton have started to concede different goals to what we conceded last season. Is because we've been having to adapt to so many injuries in those really important areas.
What about Valentin Barca?
Yeah, he's come in last few games and he played against Man City, and I thought he was absolutely fantastic. I'm not 100% convinced on his defensive attributes. Going forwards, I think if you convert him into a left winger or even a right winger, he's played there for Boca Juniors. And we know that De Zerbi loves a left-footed right winger as well, so that could be an option to try out in pre-season.
Oh, bold.
Yeah, definitely. So honestly, I think he could play anywhere, sort of in that sort of front 3, and centrally, I think he would be a good central attacking midfielder. He's got so much technical ability. He can pick a pass, he can shoot, he can cross. So there's a lot of potential there. But again, we have to call on our fans to be patient with him. He's just come from a completely different country, a different league. Sure. We're lucky that we've got a lot of South Americans in our side. So hopefully we can settle him in quite nicely, have a good pre-season, and then, the sky's the limit for him. He's another fantastic buy by our football club, where you could be talking about Valentin Barca next season as the next £100 million player from Brighton. And I think that's credit to our recruitment. We've got so many of those sorts of players within our ranks. It's just about getting them fit, getting them a good run of games, and seeing what happens. I mean, Evan Ferguson, he's to a lot of fans that have said, he's fallen off a cliff. What's happened to Evan Ferguson? Injury. He's been playing through injury, and he's not been able to be the same player he was last season. He scored a hat-trick against Newcastle at the start of the season. Got a few goals against Luton and Nottingham Forest, I believe, but then he's had the injury. So I think everyone's saying what's happening to Brighton. Nothing dramatic is happening. It's just the fact that we're having to nurse injuries on top of having to play 8 or 9 extra games a season.
Interesting.
I think given a strong transfer window, when we get these players back in our side, you will see the Brighton that everyone grew to have a sort of soft spot for last season, because we were playing magnificent football. We still are. We played incredibly well against Aston Villa yesterday. It's just about being patient and allowing our players that time to adapt in really difficult moments.
Interesting. because you kind of answered my last question there of the level of optimism. It sounds like you're very positive about having a good transfer window, and you really made a great point about having that profit. Other clubs like Aston Villa, for example, that you beat yesterday or the other day, having to comply with financial fair play, and a lot of those clubs having those sorts of problems and the opportunity to pick up those sorts of players. Sounds like you are optimistic. Can I ask you one last question about a specific player? What the hell happened to Ansu Fati? Injury again?
That is a great question. It really is a great question. He had a purple patch in Europe against Ajax. We played them home and away in consecutive week, or maybe a week in between. I can't remember now. And him and Simon Adingra had a fantastic partnership. They linked up for 2-3 goals over those 2 legs, and they were absolutely fantastic. And Ansu Fati showed that class that he can have. And then he got injured. And another performance before he got injured as well was against Bournemouth. We were losing 1-0, and De Zerbi thought, do you know what, I'm going to stick Matoma and Fati on at half time. And we scored after 40 seconds. And those two were extremely instrumental in having that burst of pace going forwards and that technical ability to get past the defenders and slot the ball in the back of the net. And we won the game 3-1. So there have been moments this season where he has made an impact. It's not been... I mean, I'm kidding myself. It has been a total flop. It's just such a shame that he got injured at that really crucial moment, because I think momentum is everything in football. And form is everything in football. You come back into a team that are low on confidence and their form's on the floor, and you're expected to be that person to come off the bench and make the difference. It's a lot of pressure for a 21-year-old, especially coming in from Barcelona, where everyone expects him to do well, expects him to be that next level player. I think he is there. He is in there somewhere. It's about getting that run without an injury and getting back to the speed that he was at Barcelona before he got injured there. He's so injury prone. I think it's such a shame because the ability is clear. It's just, can he go to a club where they can nurse him the best way possible? I mean, we've just brought in a new doctor and a new fitness coach because of our injury crisis. So the answers are there for everyone to see, I think. It's just that people sort of gloss over it and think flop, 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 when actually, no, it's just been really unfortunate cases of injuries for a lot of our players. Julio Enciso as well. You know, he came on against Villa yesterday and changed the game. I thought he was fantastic. So
yeah,
it's about getting these players back to fitness and nursing these players because they're so young. And, you know, we don't want to pile pressure on them. We don't want to be saying that they are the next £100 million player. We like to say that because for Brighton, that's such a massive thing. 27 years ago, we almost died as a club. And now we're being talked about as one of the best run football clubs in the world. So there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of talk around us. So it's just about dealing with that. And I think we've got the best owner in the world to deal with that.
Thank you, Joe.
No worries.
Well, having just heard about how awful Brighton's month has been, we now have to pivot to talk about Crystal Palace as the team of the month. But I don't think enough is made of how good a get Oliver Glasner is for Crystal Palace. He's a Europa League winner. And since he's come in, it's been a massive turnaround in form. Rebounded from 2 losses at the start of the month to win at Anfield, first of all. 2-0 against Newcastle, of course. And then the 5-2 against West Ham. 1-1 at Fulham, which is still a solid result. And then obviously the 4-0 against Man United. But that was April, so it doesn't count. But even then, they are the team of the month. And from Crystal Palace, and a large part of that is that Olise and Eze are finally playing together again. They're so full of just flair and unpredictability. But Glasner is using Olise correctly in the way Olise should be used. And it's helping them. So Olise might have a shout for Player of the Month. Eze might. Cole Palmer might. And we covered Cole Palmer extensively on this channel of recent in the number 10s video, which you can find linked in the corner here if I can remember, and also on the podcast last week, so you can go check that out. It's an extensive Chelsea tactical coverage and analysis on how they've kind of turned their form around as of late. But I'm not going to give it to Cole Palmer. Premier League already gave it to Cole Palmer. He's had enough. I'll give it to Jean-Philippe Mateta. 5 goals in 5 games, including back-to-back braces. And Palace's player of the season. It's astoundingly recency biased. But, you know, credit to him, I suppose. Just says everything about the season Crystal Palace had before the appointment of Oliver Glasner, I suppose. I'm also aware that we don't give the award to too many defenders. Sorry about that. But fear not, because we're giving the non-Premier League Player of the Month award to Andre Lunin. Not a defender or goalkeeper, but you don't see that many goalkeepers getting Player of the Month awards, do you? So welcome to just another football podcast. Subscribe. Lunin has played a huge role as a third-choice goalkeeper for Real Madrid. One, that is extremely rare. Two, he's a league champion and a Champions League finalist, and really should start the Champions League final. Surely you can't start Thibaut Courtois, and I'm aware he's back and everything, but you can't start Thibaut Courtois now. You have to give Andre Lunin the chance to finish what he started, right? And he's been fantastic. Obviously won the penalty shootout against Man City, but also in the league, Real Madrid are the strongest defense by a distance. They conceded 11 less goals than the next best defense. They conceded 22 goals. The next best is 33, which is Athletic Bilbao. He played in 20 games and conceded 13 goals, which is great, considering that he also saved 5.1 goals. So he conceded 5.1 less goals than he should have. Now, that could get confusing because it doesn't actually depend on expected goals. Let me explain this. There's expected goals, and there's post-shot expected goals on target. So the post-shot expected goals is after the shot is in the frame of the goal. If it is on target, then what is the possibility of that shot going in? So shots that are in the corner of the goal have a higher possibility of going in than shots that go in the middle. So if you have a shot that is like from 30 yards and someone just blasts it into the very, very top corner, you might find it as like an 0.8 post-shot XG, but it's like an 0.02 expected goal XG. So that's the difference there. So Andre Lunin, from the shots he faced on target, obviously post-shot XG doesn't count for shots off target. That's just a 0. But from the shots he faced on target, he saved 5 goals from going in. I hope that made sense because, yeah, that might get scary and confusing. Then lastly, the team of the month, it should go to Leverkusen again, but we've covered them way too many times. We have to give Atalanta their flowers. In the month of April, they continued their Europa League run, and now they're in the final. They beat Liverpool at Anfield, which seems to be a theme in this video, and solidified their place in 5th spot in Serie A, which now qualifies them for the Champions League, which is a great achievement for Atalanta given their budgets and their relative expectations to everything. Gianpiero Gasperini hasn't been linked to other like top European jobs for some reason. Like if AC Milan ever changed their manager, Gianpiero Gasperini has to be their top candidate, in my opinion. So there you go. These are the awards. Let me know in the comments below. Who do you give those awards to? And I will see you next time with a podcast or a video or something like that. Subscribe and like and share and everything. Cheers. Bye.